And you all are having a major impact. Whether it's from this group or not, I really appreciate the support of the Tea Party movement throughout the state. I appreciate the financial support. You wouldn't believe how far the $5s and $10 go. Matter of fact, we just filed our finance report, and we almost outraised my opponent, even though he has the backing of the state organization. And I think we had more than 4 times the contributors he did. And largely it was the 5s and 10s and $25. That means a lot. I think we're going to win this race. But I need you folks, please, emailing your neighbors. If you don't support me, don't email your neighbors, okay? if you do, I need you going home today and emailing your contact list and saying, look, just met this guy. Please get out and vote for him May 4th. So, can I take questions?
Yes,
I know this is a vetting process, so I am ready to be vetted. I like to say there's no question I won't take except for the one of how I had 3 children in 4 years. But I must qualify and say it was with one woman. I don't have any friends in Argentina. And I don't think I've ever been on the Appalachian Trail. All right,
first question.
I have kind of a question / comment. I too am an accountant, so I understand the behind the scenes
God bless you.
mentality. Couldn't quite bring myself to the CPA, but got the 4-year degree. So I understand for a lot of us this is a very new process, getting out in front and being forced to speak out, publicly and everything. So I guess my question for you is, knowing the type of person, what was the breaking point, I guess, for you to say, you know what, I can't sit back anymore and I need to do something?
I appreciate that. And for those who aren't accountants, I'll do my typical, hi, I'm a CPA.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was my drive was bigger. That's very personal, so I'm going to answer that way. I don't mind it being personal. My drive was bigger than my introversion. A matter of fact, my folks were very worried about that when I was a kid. I mean, I was very shy, had a hard time looking people in the eye, and of course that was a rule in my very conservative house. You shake their hand and look them in the eye. I went into retail in high school. I wanted a job, and really my folks were, very, very strict, and they were worried about the influences out there, and so they really lobbied hard to get me a job at a Christian bookstore. And frankly, if it hadn't been for my mom being so pestilent to the owner, I don't know that I would have got my job. But because of my drive there and wanting to do a good job, I quickly went from being the little stock clerk in the back room because the owners didn't want me out front to being the guy out front. And by 19, I was managing the shop. And it was really a drive to sell, to do well for them. So that kind of forced me to open up. It was the passion of learning history and what our founders had, and just sick and tired of hearing folks in my church. It was this tiny little church that my dad was actually pastoring that would just complain incessantly about what was going on in Washington and wouldn't do anything. And so it really did start politically for me just as I have some time, I can do this. I can go help that judge candidate or that, and so I would just volunteer, and that passion just kind of grew over time. There was no singular moment. There was no flip of the switch. For me, it was kind of built in. It was built into me through high school. It was built in just because my family was patriotic, even if they weren't politically involved. It was built in just from frustration. I can tell you, had I been married and had children before I decided to jump, I don't know that, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
It's hard, yeah.
But I don't know that I would have ever gotten involved. I think God had his hand on that. But because I had the time, I said, I can do this. I'm gonna give some time to that. And I didn't give near the time that looking back, that I probably felt like I was at the time. Now it's, I don't want to whine because it's our job to do it, but this is a tremendous sacrifice. I shouldn't be the one saying it, but it really is. And I know a lot of us look at politicians and know those, those clowns, and those that abuse their power are clowns, and they ought to be thrown out. But for those that are doing it right, it's, we're away from our kids again this weekend, and that's fine. But what we want to instill in our 3 little children is a cause that's greater than any one of us. And ultimately, for Deborah and I, sorry to sound radical, that's first spiritual. That's first about who we serve while we're here on this earth. But a close second, if there is a close second to that for me, is what we're really leaving behind. And you know, I can leave behind a business, which I'm working on because I own one. I can leave behind a good education, but what I want to most leave behind is the opportunity for them in a free country to explore those very same things, and an opportunity for them to pass that to their children. If I give them great wealth, but they have less freedom, then I've not given them wealth at all, if you follow what I'm saying. So.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm afraid I don't understand the inner mechanics of the auditor's office, county and statewide. If you leave the position of a county auditor, go to a state auditor, and you see an indiscretion, what is your mechanism? How does it change between having been in that position in the county and then being a state auditor? In other words, do you have something that maybe is not criminal but is improper?
Right.
You don't have an enforcement power per se. You have to go through another agency of the state, like the Attorney General.
That's a little bit complicated of a question. I'll do my best to give a quick answer. First of all, I've never been a county auditor.
I'm sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's okay, sir. You might be, my opponent was, and that's his claim to fame. Okay, that might be what you're thinking of. But let me explain that for a minute, because it's a very important question. The county auditor and state auditor are two very different functions. And there's a lot of confusion, you know, maybe, except it would look like it was very self-serving. I'd like for us to relabel it. We ought to relabel it as a state, because the county auditors really aren't auditing anything, okay? If you understand these terms, and those that maybe aren't accountants wouldn't, so don't feel bad if you don't. But a county auditor, I would liken it to being a controller inside a company. Nothing wrong with it. Very important work, okay, but very, very insular. They're actually doing the work inside the county. They're cutting checks. They're doing the weights and measures thing. They're doing dog tags. They're assessing properties, values, et cetera. But the county auditor has the role of ensuring that there's legislation that backs up or policy that backs up the cutting of the check itself. So they're vouching, if you will, those checks. So in that regard, that's probably where the auditor term came from. But from a financial audit, from a CPA's perspective, they're not doing any auditing. The state auditor is the one that does all the auditing, okay? They actually roll in, just like you would to a private business. They look at the books and they issue a financial audit report on that government, okay? So what can the state auditor do? I mean, first of all, what can the county auditor do? They can just not cut the check. I mean, and many of them have done that, and that's the right thing to do. The state auditor's kind of coming in after the fact. They're supposed to be the objective, independent body that walks in and says, all right, county auditor, you know, open it up. Let me see what you got, and we're going to issue a report to your county and the Ohio people on what happened here, okay? And we're going to say what the balance sheet is and what the income statement looks like and all that stuff, and then we're going to issue notes. It really would depend on the indiscretion. If the indiscretion is something small that wouldn't be considered super material and doesn't appear to be fraudulent, but maybe it was a mistake or something like that, it's going to result in basically a reported finding. So it's going to be part of that package of notes that's really designed not to punish as much as it is designed to go back and say, you know, clean this up. Don't let it happen again. But that's also public. So, you know, it's not uncommon politically for something like that to become a political issue as things move forward, as they should. Now, if there's something bigger than that, if there's something that appears to be fraudulent or there's a pattern there, the auditor state actually has a lot of power. They can then roll in with their special investigation unit. They can do the work, but yes, ultimately prosecutorially, it's going to get turned over to the Attorney General's office. Just to be direct, since I'm here stumping, my opponent likes to talk about this. He likes to say it's not about debits and credits, it's about crooks and cheats. Great. Well, it is about debits and credits. It is about doing the work of the auditor's office. If he wanted to be about crooks and cheats, he should have run for Attorney General, where I supported him against Mike DeWine, because that's the office that deals with crooks and cheats. If you look at the organizational chart of the auditor's office, some 730 of their 800-some staff are financial audit people. I mean, that's their job. They're issuing some 4,500 audited statements per year. It's like a big CPA firm. That's what it is. But there's a lot of power there once a problem's identified. Obviously, the vast majority of the audits that are being done, I mean, we're talking about your libraries and your local city government and your local schools. I mean, there's not those types of issues. It's the very small minority where there's a problem, a big enough problem that rises to the attention, obviously, like a Cuyahoga County, or even the Lottery Commission, which Mary Taylor has now done the right thing and